Okay, I think we're back. And so, reintroduction briefly, so it will go on the overall video. Welcome to our 2019 Oscar Movie Marathon. I'm Christiana Ellis.
And I'm Mike Routine.
And we are going to continue our annual tradition of trying to see as many of the Oscar-nominated movies as possible. We have done this many times before, usually streamed on YouTube Live, but now we're here on Twitch and doing that instead. And so let's talk about first, before anything else, why do we do this? Is it because we think that the Oscars are the end-all be-all of what defines a good movie or not?
No. It just gives us a chance to focus on seeing a bunch of good, hopefully good movies that we may have not gotten around to or not thought about. We usually end up seeing something that we'd never heard of or never thought we would like and end up really enjoying. So that's part of why we've kept doing it.
Absolutely.
Even some years we've done very poorly and still enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So.
And so it's exactly the Oscars is just picks by a bunch of people. They're not perfect and they're not ultimatums, but what they are is a list of movies that at least someone thinks are good. And it includes lots of movies, like you said, that we might not have gone to see otherwise. And it's an opportunity to encourage ourselves to get out to the theater when we can. All of the things that you said. And so one of the things that I think was really interesting in sort of pre-nomination Oscar news this year was the brief discussion over the summer, I think, that they were going to introduce a new category of popular movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I remember that being a thing, and then I didn't see it on here, and I don't remember it going away. I didn't.
No, after the backlash from the announcement, they did announce that they weren't going to do it after all.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyone who didn't hear about any of that, basically the idea was that they announced that in a new category they would be offering a reward for best popular movie, as though that's a different thing from best overall movie. And everyone pretty much immediately pegged that as that is so that they can give Black Panther an Oscar without tainting the actual best picture category.
Right.
And I think
superhero movie in there. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and so I think that there was, as a result, a perception that that's really what that category was all about. And probably that perception was accurate.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of when they did it was too obvious.
Yeah.
That or if that wasn't what they meant, they should have checked the timing on it, because by putting it out there right as Black Panther was, overwhelmingly a success.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. So
yeah.
I think that call out, perhaps because it was so on the nose, was absolutely why they decided, you know what, let's, even regardless of whether that was the actual reason, they realized that was the perception of the category and withdrew it. And I think that was the right decision, because on the one hand, it's true, and we've talked about it in the past, that frequently you end up with a list of best picture movies where maybe people have seen one or two of them. And lots of people's favorite movies never get nominated. That's been a problem for the Oscars for a while, because the Academy is not always super in touch with what the general public likes to see.
Correct.
Yeah. But, so ultimately I think it was the right call, because having a popular movie category separate, like by what metric can you possibly distinguish Best Picture from Best Popular Picture? Like box office? Like what?
I felt like that's what it would have been, is just like of the top, maybe they just take the top 10 box office ones and they vote which is the actual best movie of those. But it was poorly thought out.
Yeah. So I think that's why I think a lot of people pegged it as they were recognizing that there was some building buzz towards the idea that maybe Black Panther should get a Best Picture nomination, but there was people who were feeling like that somehow shouldn't happen, and yet they didn't want to be criticized for not. Yeah, so who knows if that's exactly what happened, but in the meantime, they decided, know what? Let's actually not do that popular movie category. So I'm trying to monitor the Twitch chat. If I keep looking over here, that's why, and it's just because nobody's actually in there yet, but the technical stuff is a little different today. So apologies if that happens a lot. But in the meantime, let's talk about the way we do this, which is today we're going to just break down, read through the nominations and talk about which ones we have seen already, which ones we haven't seen already, which ones we're excited to see, perhaps. But then, as the marathon continues, culminating in the actual award ceremony, our tendency is, if one or the other of us has seen a movie, but not both, we'll talk about it briefly in spoiler-free terms. But if both of us have seen a movie, we'll get into an in-depth discussion, and frequently we'll get into spoilers. And we usually will, that will be clear when we begin the conversation. And so this episode is just going to be the nominations themselves, but we'll be posting updates as the marathon continues with those additional discussions. So, with all that out of the way, I think that we probably every year end up just doing the categories in the order that I have them on the spreadsheet. But
so my thing says off air on the top right.
Okay, well, yeah, so it will. Because the way that I've got it set up is we are streaming to Twitch with a different means. And so thank you for pointing that out, but it's fine in this case.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So
didn't want to go for like an hour.
We got lots of experimental technology happening right now. And so hopefully it's going to, you know what? Let me do something real quick here. Okay. Hopefully that will, there we go. Oops. Yeah, I know. Hang on. I'll get that taken care of. I'm shifting things around because I have this little pop-up from the system tray every so often that's cutting off a corner of your video when it does, and I don't want it to do that. So, shifting the windows around. And this is because I'm trying to run this all on a laptop instead of my normal computer with 2 webcams and memory and all that good stuff. So, making do. Anyway, so our typical pattern is to just read the categories in the order that we have them in on the spreadsheet, which is whatever order that they were in from an article that I read a long time ago, and then I just keep using the same template for the spreadsheet every year. And so unless you have a suggestion for some alternative order to read them in, we could do that again.
No, I don't think it matters.
All right. Now, I know you're on your iPad today. Are you able to read the spreadsheet as well?
Yeah, so I'm only not using my laptop because I didn't bring my charger from work. I do have a home charger, but it's like frayed, so you have to like hold it to make it charge. I don't really feel like doing that the whole time.
Fair.
But I have enough. I think if I'm just looking at the spreadsheet, the laptop should make it.
Okay.
It's just when I'm streaming, I knew it would pull too much power.
Yeah.
So,
okay. All right. Well, then, would you like to do the honors of reading the Best Picture category nominees?
Yes. So nominated for Best Picture are Black Panther, Black Klansman with the KKK in the title.
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, Roma, A Star Is Born, and Vice.
Yep. And so, out of the gate, I have seen 4 of the 8. You've seen 3 of the 8. Technically, I had only seen 3 of the 8 when the nominees were announced, but I've seen 1 since then.
That was the same with me. I saw Roma since they were announced, but either way.
Yes, I see that you have updated it there on the spreadsheet. That's great. So that means that you and I have both seen Black Panther and Roma.
Yep.
I have also seen Bohemian Rhapsody and Green Book. You have seen...
I have seen Vice.
Vice. As previously mentioned, that would mean when we get to our discussions, we could have an in-depth discussion of Roma and Black Panther, but we would have just brief discussions of Bohemian Rhapsody and Green Book and Vice, as though that was not clear, I guess. But for now, we're only talking high-level things. We're not really getting into review or impressions or anything yet. But as you know, in keeping with that previous topic, though, Black Panther did go ahead and get its Best Picture nomination. I think it's probably a pretty long shot to win. But at the same time, it's, first superhero movie to get Best Picture nomination. A big historic thing. And I mean, it is a great movie. I like it a lot. So, but at the same time, I don't think it's likely to win.
No, I wouldn't think it's likely to win.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there's been a little bit of stuff, meta stuff in the news regarding Bohemian Rhapsody, because the director, Bryan Singer, has had some people accuse him of doing some pretty awful stuff. I have not, to be honest, looked into the details of all of it, but I mean, I think that's been kind of behind the scenes drama around him for a while.
Yeah, I feel like this isn't the first that we'd heard of that, but I didn't.
No.
I'm not.
I think it's the first time it's sort of resurfaced in the Me Too era, though. And a lot of people feeling like, well, if everyone has decided that Kevin Spacey is bad now, why is Bryan Singer still getting lots of work and Oscar nominations and stuff? And that's a fair question, especially because it's, I don't know. So I'll confess to not having read all of the detailed stuff about that, but certainly it seems like a valid question and part of the conversation overall regarding this year, especially in just that question of what do you do with something like that? If a bad person makes a good movie, do you not give the movie awards because of that guy, even though lots of other people worked on it? That's kind of a weird... I mean, there's no rules about that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Without knowing, how bad of a guy he is, it's hard for
me,
because not to say that there's some... I mean, I guess there are levels of, does he just, mistreat people in general? Okay, well, if he's just kind of an eccentric jerk off, okay, then that's... Well, maybe you don't hold that against him, but there's... Yeah.
Some of the accusations are pretty bad, sexual assault and stuff like that. But at least one of those accusers, the case did go to court and he was not convicted. of that one. And so, like, does that mean he didn't do it? Or you see how that kind of gets messy, right? Like, they couldn't prove it in court, but the accuser has not recanted. So, anyway, we don't need to make the whole discussion today about that, but certainly that's in the news about Bryan Singer, the director of Bohemian Rhapsody. And then there's a little bit of discussions about Green Book, which won a Golden Globe, but there's been some pushback, I think, against it on the basis that, sure, it's a feel-good movie about race issues that is yet again a movie about a white guy becoming less racist and taking a subject that could have been a more interesting movie and turning it into another movie about a white guy getting less racist. Like there aren't a lot of those already.
It's true.
But
we still need those movies.
Well, yeah, see, that's kind of the thing too, is that there are a lot of people who do still need to hear that message, apparently. So, in any event, I think in terms of like separate from the movie itself conversations, I don't know that there are a lot of other news stories about the rest of these. I don't think it's mostly about the movie itself, unless you've heard some that I haven't.
No, I mean, I think most of the rest of them is it's the movie itself, or the content, or the actors, and but the politics of them, that kind of stuff, but nothing dramatic.
Right.
You know, I do want to say, though, this is probably the first year in a long time, to our point earlier, where I'm actually interested in seeing all of them. Green Book is probably the one I would be least interested in, just on the face of it, if it hadn't already won the Golden Globe, and a number of other interesting things that have come about it. And that, honestly, that's kind of been this Oscars as a whole. I'm like, to the point, I'm almost at 30% of the stuff seen when we were on our first recording. There's years I haven't even got to 30%. And just right now, just in things that I've naturally watched because I was interested in them, I've knocked off a lot of these movies, and not with the intention of like watching movies that are going to be Oscar nominated. I just feel like it started to converge a little bit more, where they're getting things that are actually entertaining and interesting. So, whether Black Panther kind of moved the, I know it's used all the time right now, but the Overton window of like, what we, it just feels like there's more movies that are entertaining in the whole thing. My thing
Sorry about that.
So that's just kind of one comment I had overall when I was going through this. I was like, wow, there's just a lot of really, and there are things that I wanted to see and just never got around to that are on here. So if I had just seen everything I wanted to see during the year, I'd be significantly through this list already, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of movies that were already, on my interest radar. Now there were a couple that surprised me. For example, I feel like I knew nothing at all about The Favorite. I don't feel like I had even heard about it, like the title. And then it ties for second, for most total nominations, it ties with Roma at 10, which is a lot. And so it's like, oh, wow, that's a lot of nominations for a movie that I had never heard of. But that might actually just be more on me that I didn't hear about it.
Yeah. I didn't know as much about it until it hit the Golden Globes. And then but once I learned what it was like, well, that seems actually interesting,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've watched the trailer, and it's definitely one that I want to see, and not just because of the marathon. But in the meantime, though, let's go ahead and move to the next category, because we have a bunch to get through. So the best animated feature nominees are Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, Mirai, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I have seen 3 of those 5. I've seen Incredibles 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
I have seen Incredibles 2 and Isle of Dogs.
Isle of Dogs is definitely one that I've been meaning to see, and I'm almost surprised at myself that I haven't already, as a fan of not only animation but also Wes Anderson and dogs.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing Ralph Breaks the Internet and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Those were 2 that I would have waited until they were just online. I wouldn't have gone to the theater, but now that they're on here as part of that, as part of the marathon, might be the impetus I need to just go see at least Spider-Man in the theater.
Yeah, well, I'll just go ahead and say this is not a criticism of any of the other movies on the list, but of the 3 that I've seen so far, Spider-Man is my favorite by a wide margin. It's so good. So, recommend that one. People should see it in theaters if you can. We're going to do the more detail, further discussion as the marathon progresses, but at least I want to just put a shout out for that one right away because I love it so much. All right, so I think Incredibles 2 and Ralph Breaks the Internet, those are sort of expected contenders in a year. Best Animated Feature is always going to have a Pixar and a Disney pretty much every year. So those are not surprising. Isle of Dogs, is Wes Anderson, but when he does animated movies, the 2 of them so far have both gotten nominated. Mirai, I think, is Japanese. I don't know anything about that one in particular, though.
Yeah, I tried to look up some stuff, and it's hard to even find stuff on it.
I had heard the title and seen the poster before, but I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, I don't either.
I guess we'll find out. So would you like to read Best Director?
Yep. So we have Spike Lee for Black Klansman, Pavel Pawlikowski for Cold War, Yorgos Lanthimos for The Favorite, Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, Adam McKay for Vice.
And
I've seen Vice and Roma.
I have only seen Roma. We'll be having updating those sorts of things for as we go too. What's interesting here? Let's briefly talk about Roma being tied for most total nominations this year, which is it's a Mexican film in Spanish language. So that many nominations for a foreign language film is really something.
Yeah, I think that's and I mean obviously it got 10, but let's not forget that Cold War got 3, I think, which is pretty good for a foreign language film as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, and I think that in general, the best foreign language films nominated this year seem a little higher profile than usual, or more recognized, I guess. They're not only in that category, but yeah, two foreign language films getting Best Director nominations is something. I'm excited to see Cold War for that reason. If we can, hopefully we can. Sometimes it's hard to see some of the foreign language films.
That one I know for sure is in some of the major theaters just because of this. I think it's produced by, I think, Amazon, but I think they're putting it in the theater first and then they'll put it on streaming. But I remember seeing something, and I might be wrong exactly how that relationship works, but
well, it's interesting how we're getting more and more of these, what used to be derogatorily called direct-to-video. We're seeing more of these streaming service first premieres, like Roma, although it's getting theatrical release in some places, is primarily a Netflix movie produced by Netflix. and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who has made lots of other movies that are good. And another good one, although I'm sure we'll talk more about it since you and I have both seen it. But it being the only one of the 5 I've seen so far, I think it deserves its nomination.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think this is but the last thing I'd say about these directors, I think it's just a cool mix of directors. Spike Lee, who's been around forever, and is, Adam McKay, who's, kind of starting to find this rhythm and this voice. He's really good, but now he's starting to get a style that, is really cool. Alfonso Cuarón, obviously, is kind of in between the two of them, with having been around a little bit, established himself. And then you've got these two, maybe not necessarily newer, but newer to us.
Right. I mean, I think Alfonso Cuarón, I don't want to call it a handicap exactly, but in terms of like Oscar recognition, he makes movies in the Spanish language, which is just going to be inherently make it a little bit more difficult to get mainstream American recognition. But I'm trying to remember, has he made English?
He made one of
Gravity, duh.
He made Gravity, and he made one of the Harry Potters.
I don't think so. Was that him? Maybe was it? I'm forgetting now. Okay, I'm confusing him with someone else, I think.
I thought he did.
Well, let's see. I'm pulling up his. And he made Children of Men. God, I'm forgetting half of these things that he's made because I'm mostly thinking of his smaller movies. Yeah, okay, so he made Gravity, he made Children of Men. You're right, he made Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I'm not sure who else I was thinking of that was in that. But yeah, okay, so obviously he's made lots of great movies. But I'm thinking of like Y Tu Mama Tambien, and I think maybe it was just because of his because this movie is in the Spanish language, that's kind of what I was, associating with him with in my head. You know what? Okay. I was definitely also including someone else's filmography in there too. The point is, he's a great director. He's made a lot of great movies. And the fact that this one is getting some big recognition despite being in a different language, for the American Academy is something.
Yep.
And then Yorgos Lanthimos and Paweł Pawlikowski. It's probably Paweł, right? It's spelled with a W, but yeah. Because that's Cold War is a Polish film, I think. Well, we'll cover that more later. Let's keep moving because it would be easy to get in the weeds and run out of time. We can always come back to all of these discussions. So, Best Actor nominations, we have Christian Bale for Vice, Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born, Willem Dafoe for At Eternity's Gate, Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody, and Viggo Mortensen for Green Book. And I have only seen Green Book of those.
And I've only seen Vice, although I thought you had seen Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, I did. You're right. I didn't type that into the spreadsheet for some reason. So yes, I have seen those two. I don't know why. Anyway, yes, I have seen those two. I recall when they announced the nominees being a little surprised to see Viggo there, but not Mahershala Ali, who's the other lead in that movie. He ended up being in supporting actor, but at the same time, I know that actors get put in categories not by the Academy, but by the studios who submit their performances. But that one's frustrating for me because it definitely feels like, let's put Mahershala Ali in supporting actor instead of actor because we don't think he would win in Best Actor, but he might win in supporting actor. But Viggo goes into Best Actor. I mean, I like Viggo Mortensen, but I don't know. I was a little bit frustrated with that one. Any other, I guess, high-level thoughts about those, or do we want to keep moving?
I mean, everybody on here is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I like all these actors.
Yeah. Well, and I think that in terms of like the buzz, like what people are talking about with Bohemian Rhapsody, I mean, Rami Malek's performance as Freddie Mercury is like, that's like half what people talk about with the movie.
Christian Bale's pretty amazing as Dick Cheney, though, too.
Well, and that's such a, like, he has, as his career has progressed, become such, like, he's become one of those people who, like, radically transforms themselves for every role. And certainly this one is notable in that regard.
Yes. Without getting too much into it, just I think one of the things that just to note with his performance in there, that it's not just that he radically transforms and they make him look like Cheney when he's older, the guy that we all know, like kind of recognize, like that sort of, oh man, he looks just like him. But the performance of how he uses those same mannerisms as a younger person and really makes you like feel like you're watching what that guy looked like when he was younger. Like that's probably one of the more powerful parts of the movie, which he is phenomenal. But anyway, so.
Great. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah. All right. So then the best actress, Yalitza Aparicio for Roma, Glenn Close for The Wife, Olivia Colman for The Favorite, Lady Gaga for Star Is Born, and Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me?
So we've each seen Roma. Interesting story about Yalitza Aparicio. Is apparently, like, this is her first movie. She wasn't even really an actress before. She was a teacher. And so I don't know how... the article I read didn't actually get into, like, how did she get discovered to be in this. It was mostly just talking about sort of her process and how she brought her past experience into the role. But she's not... Best Actress nominations, not bad for first movie.
I think the other interesting thing in this category is that in the Golden Globes, Glenn Close beat out Lady Gaga, who has been getting a lot of buzz, obviously, for Star Is Born. And The Wife is really not a movie anybody really knew about.
Yeah.
And Melissa McCarthy joins the list of actors, actresses, or any movie makers in general who was nominated for a Oscar and a Razzie in the same year. Different films, obviously.
What was the movie for the Razzie? Was it
I can't even remember what it's called.
I don't remember.
It was something that I never had heard of.
Increasingly, I have come to think of the Razzies as I don't like that they exist. I don't think they're funny anymore, really.
The Happy Time Murders.
Oh, see, that's like... I didn't see it, but, I mean... It seems, to me, from the trailer, I was interested, and it just seemed like it's a movie that's doing its thing. It's doing something very unusual as kind of an experiment. And even if people don't like it, the idea of trying to say, oh, let's give it a movie for worst movie is like, no, I doubt it. I think there are probably other movies that are objectively worse. But it's also, I'm increasingly just of the opinion that, like, there is not value in society in deciding what's the worst of something. That is not a value-added thing to do, in my opinion. But oh well.
I still find it funny.
It's fine. Fortunately, the existence of the Razzies is not dependent on my opinion.
Nope.
All right, so the nominees for Best Supporting Actor, we have Mahershala Ali for Green Book. And boy, he's showing up in everything lately, which is a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, Adam Driver for Black Klansman, Sam Elliott for A Star Is Born, Richard E. Grant for Can You Ever Forgive Me, and Sam Rockwell for Vice. And I have still only seen Green Book, but he's great in it. You've seen Vice, already mentioned Christian Bale for that, but is Sam Rockwell's W equally captivating or whatever? The right term?
Well, he's different because he's almost more of a parody.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Christian Bale's actually trying to be Cheney in this sort of. It's got a weird tone to the movie. I mean, you just have to watch it. But Sam Rockwell is definitely meant to be a parody of George Bush, and he does a phenomenal job because he plays exactly into the hands of like what. It's almost like a really good Saturday Night Live skit, where, he's playing on all the notes that people remember and think are funny, but still having enough reality to it to kind of like touch on like, to carry the story along in a true way, but just so over the top. But it's a nice, it just makes for a nice like juxtaposition with Christian Bale in the movie. So.
Great. I like Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, and I'm interested in most of these other movies. I mean, Can You Ever Forgive Me? I hadn't heard of. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah,
I might see it, but these other ones I'm interested in. So.
All right. So, do you want to read Best Supporting Actress?
Yep. Amy Adams for Vice, Marina de Tavira for Roma, Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk, Emma Stone, The Favorite, and Rachel Weisz, The Favorite. And I have seen Vice and Roma.
Yeah. Who does Amy Adams play in Vice? I don't even know.
Liz Cheney, his wife.
Oh, okay. I like Amy Adams.
She also phenomenal.
There's lots of good. I mean, this is a great category. Like, I didn't know Marina de Tavira before Roma, but she's great in it. But all the rest are people that I already knew and liked. So this is a fun category.
Which one is she? Is she the mother?
Yeah, the mother of the family that Cleo works for. Yeah.
Okay. She was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a fun category, and two from The Favorite against each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare that happens because your point, like the studio decides. I thought it was interesting that they put them both up and they're both in there. So.
Yeah. But boy, if you've watched the trailer for that movie, though, it's like that's a whole ensemble of women characters in that movie. So you can understand why there would be lots of people they want to submit. But so let's move on though to Best Original Screenplay. We have The Favorite, written by Deborah Davis and Tony McNamara. First Reformed by Paul Schrader. Green Book by Nick Vallelonga, Brian Curry, and Peter Farrelly. Roma by Alfonso Cuarón. And Vice by Adam McKay. I've seen Green Book and Roma.
Yep, and as the theme goes, I've seen Roma and Vice.
Yep. Do you know anything about First Reformed? I
don't.
Yeah, I don't either. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, that's the only one on there that I obviously the other ones we've talked a little bit about. That's the only one I wasn't sure of.
Yep. So, Best Adapted Screenplay?
You've got the Coen brothers for The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. A whole crew of people with Spike Lee for Black Klansman. Nicole Holofcener and Jeff Whitty for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Barry Jenkins, If Beale Street Could Talk. Eric Roth, Bradley Cooper, and Will Fetters for Star Wars. You're the only one who has seen one of these.
Yeah. I saw The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is another Netflix movie. It's an anthology Western movie, directed by the Coen brothers, which, I like all of those things. And it's on Netflix, so super easy to watch. So it's one that, even though I think it only has it has one other nomination other than this one, but it's a movie that I recommend, partly just because it's easy if you have Netflix.
Yep, and this was one of those ones where I said, like, hey, there's a lot of movies on here that I would have that I was naturally going to watch anyway. This is one of them.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed particularly on this one, but there was a little bit of it on the other one too. I don't know if just more people are getting credited in the screenplay category, like per film, or if there are actually more writers per film that are happening these days. I feel like it's just more people are getting credit.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're actually using more writers.
I think you're right. I think that it is becoming more common to credit everybody who contributed. whereas the tendency might have been previously to really only credit the head writer, even if other people helped. And that's probably just comes down to people's contracts. You know what I mean? Like whether they insist on being credited for their work or not.
Right.
Because I'm sure that sometimes the math of that is we will pay you a little bit more to not be credited. You know, because I don't know how that works. But yeah,
Right.
I think you're right that we are seeing more that there's a whole list. And I think it makes sense too for Black Klansman, for example, to have several people in addition to Spike Lee, just because it is an adaptation of a true story. And so the idea that you want to have lots of the consultants who might know the actual history versus the people who are doing more like the narrative writing, you know, it makes sense that you might have multiple contributors there. I have less of an explanation for why you need 3 people for A Star Is Born, but that's not a problem. It's just, I don't know.
I mean, some of that might just be it was Bradley Cooper's first, right?
I think, yeah, it might be.
I mean, it's an early one for him, so maybe he just had, these guys helped him out a lot.
Yeah. All right. So next we have the best foreign film. We have Capernaum from Lebanon. I think I pronounced that right. Cold War from Poland. Never Look Away from Germany. Roma from Mexico. And Shoplifters from Japan. We've each seen Roma, but that's the only one so far. There have been years where neither of us managed to see any of the foreign films because sometimes they're not easy to see.
Right.
Hopefully it will be a little easier to... obviously, Roma is very easy to see this year because it's on Netflix. But, you know, hopefully some of the others will be viewable in ways without having to live in New York or LA or be on the Academy and receive screeners.
Exactly. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yep.
The original score.
Mm-hmm.
Black Panther, Ludwig Göransson. Black Klansman, Terrence Blanchard. Beale Street Could Talk, Nicholas Britell. Isle of Dogs, Alexander Desplat. Mary Poppins Returns, Mark Scheinert.
Mm-hmm. We've both seen Black Panther.
Yep, I've seen Isle of Dogs.
Yeah. This is not a criticism of the score for Black Panther, but, you know, there's lots of movies this year that I felt like had a great score, and I wouldn't have had Black Panther on the list necessarily. I mean, I think the score is good, but it didn't stand out to me in the same way that some others that didn't get nominated have. So I wonder if this is... I mean, I don't want to criticize the score of Black Panther because it's also possible that I just didn't really listen to it with that sort of in mind. But I wonder sometimes if, like, some of them are, well, we want to give Black Panther lots of nominations that aren't the big ones. That's always that paranoia, right?
Yeah, maybe. I'd have to kind of pay attention to it again. I remember it more for the songs that were either in the credits or inspired by the movie. You know, there was a whole like piece to the marketing that I remember a lot more than the score. They were all good.
Yeah, I don't want to be dismissive of the score, and maybe it was just a matter of, you know, we've talked about this in the past too, of scores that really do draw your attention to them, or scores that that are underneath everything and enhancing it without necessarily calling your attention to it. And so maybe I just didn't notice it even as it was improving everything that it was accompanying.
Isle of Dogs is definitely the one that draws your attention to it.
Oh yeah?
But in a weird, like, in a subtle way, it reminds me kind of like maybe like Peter and the Wolf, where it's almost like each area and person. Like, I don't remember if exactly each character has their own score, but it definitely advances the story via the score a lot.
Very nice.
It's just part of the storytelling, which is interesting. But anyway.
All right. So, best original song. All the Stars from Black Panther. I'll Fight from RBG. The Place Where Lost Things Go from Mary Poppins Returns. Shallow from A Star Is Born. And When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And we've both seen Black Panther. I have also seen The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and certainly that song is memorable in that movie. I didn't especially remember All the Stars, but I haven't re-listened to it either. It's been a little while since I saw Black Panther because it came out early in the year.
Yeah, and then you've got 2 musicals on here in addition of Mary Poppins and Star Is Born, and then
RBG is a documentary, I think. Yeah,
it's a documentary, so that'll be interesting. We'll see how that kind of fits in.
Yeah.
All right, production design. Here's where sometimes we start moving into some of the more
technical
popular things occasionally, or big production. So Black Panther, The Favorite, First Man, Mary Poppins Returns, and Roma. So actually the only one that we haven't really seen before on here, on the list before, is First Man. Of course, the Ryan Gosling Moon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like when that movie was coming out, that there was buzz leading up to the release, like it was going to be a much bigger deal, and then it kind of seemed to come and go pretty fast in the theaters.
Yeah, I mean, it got a lot of these technical. Got several nominations for its technical stuff, but nothing for none of the big. Was it a good movie story?
Right.
Yeah.
But Black Panther, obviously, I think, when we talk about production design that calls attention to itself, how about Black Panther? You definitely notice the production design in that movie, but it's great. It creates this sort of fully realized, fictional civilization that is amazing. It has different regional differences and all sorts of cool stuff and cool technology. It's great. It's, very out there. Whereas, by contrast, the production design in Roma is, I think, substantially less flashy, but no less effective for what it's doing.
Right. It's very cinema verita. Production. So.
Yeah. But having everything look just right, but also in the way that supports everything that they're doing. Like, we'll talk more about the details of what's great about Roma in future discussions, but I think the production, it feels like a good nomination to me.
Yeah, I agree. And this next one that's coming up here in cinematography. I can't remember, am I reading this or are you?
You go ahead.
Okay. Cold War, The Favorite, Never Look Away, Roma, and A Star Is Born.
And so we've both only seen Roma, but boy, is there some cool cinematography in Roma.
There really is. And there were other movies that I have seen this year that I thought Vice had phenomenal cinematography, so I'm interested to see some of these other films, and see if they hold up to, what I liked about that. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that really went with it, but
yeah.
I mean, there's other good. I mean, I thought Ready Player One had awesome cinematography, but that wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, I think Ready Player One did some things really cool, and it's not even that I thought anything that it did was bad, but it just became kind of a McDonald's cheeseburger by the end. You know what I mean? Like it's good for what it is, and if it's serving up a specific thing and that it's consumable, and then you don't really think about it afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think it would have gotten any of that. I felt like the cinematography was one of the things that it did well. I thought it had a really good look to it.
Yeah.
Outside of just the visual effects, I thought a lot of it was really sharp. But either way, I thought, anyway, Vice,
So,
I really thought.
Yeah, some of the Shining segment in Ready Player One is kind of amazing.
That one is,
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Anyway,
Yeah. We'll see what these other ones have to deliver.
Yeah. So the nominations for Best Costume Design include The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Panther, The Favorite, Mary Poppins Returns, and Mary Queen of Scots. So in keeping with what this category always has, we have period pieces and sci-fi action. I guess Black Panther, sci-fi action, it's a superhero movie. So, but the point being, you're either doing period costumes or you are doing fantastical costumes. The costumes in Black Panther are pretty cool. They're good in Ballad of Buster Scruggs, but it's also a Western. I mean, of the two that I've seen, I feel like Black Panther's got it locked to me, but I haven't seen the other three.
I mean, from the previews I've seen of Mary Poppins and just some of the stuff I've seen on that, it looks pretty sharp too.
I've heard good things about Mary Poppins Returns. I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So on to Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Border, Mary Queen of Scots, and Vice.
I don't know anything about Border, but I know in the trailers for Mary Queen of Scots, one of the things that seems like they make prominent is not just the makeup that would have been worn like at the time, but also the makeup that at the time was kind of used to try to cover up people being very unhealthy. And kind of the sort of like the tons and tons of makeup that you put on for the public appearance that suddenly in different lighting when you've had a long day doesn't look great anymore, and you look like it seems to cover and kind of in some ways be about that, like this idea that there's this one picture of the royals, but then also what's really going on behind the scenes, even as a period piece. And then Vice, obviously, it's got some flashy prosthetics and such, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, just taking these characters through multiple stages of their lives, people who we all recognize and know. I mean, there's a talent to that. Not just to do it in the one time, but to carry the whole, through the whole time frame.
Yep.
So.
All right. So Best Documentary Feature has Free Solo, Hale County This Morning, This Evening, Minding the Gap, Of Fathers and Sons, and RBG. So RBG we saw just a moment ago in the Best Original Song category. Neither of us have seen any of these. I like the Hale County This Morning, This Evening is a fun title. It makes me want to know what that's about.
Yeah, the only other one that I know about other than RBG is Minding the Gap, because that's one of the other ones. It's a Hulu produced one. So another one of those where it's streaming, straight to streaming. Well, I don't know if it was produced by Hulu. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I know that it only shown on Hulu, and it was, went straight to that. So it's like a skateboarding thing. But
okay. It's not about London subways, underground?
No, it's not about trying to make sure you don't fall in the subway, the tube trick.
Yep.
Best sound mixing. Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, First Man, Roma, and A Star Is Born.
So, as discussed before, I've seen Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Roma. I think my viewing experience of Roma is not the best one for me to judge its sound mixing because it was just on a hotel room TV with the TV speakers. So, I mean, it seemed fine, but I didn't think about it much otherwise.
Yeah, it's just kind of an odd one for me to see on here and in sound and editing, because I don't remember. I mean, it's primarily a dialogue-heavy movie.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they're probably focusing on some of the big scenes that, you know, we'll talk more about, but like the forest fire and the riot.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. And and I think about the martial arts training, like kind of the sort of has that feel, you know, the noise of the rods or whatever. Yeah, so okay, fair enough.
But yeah, like I said, I it's not, you know, hotel room TV speakers are not the best way to judge that sort of stuff.
No, and then I'll go ahead and just say best sound editing is the exact same, except that we get A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
Added in. And
in place of A Star Is Born.
I'm 100% sure of the difference in sound mixing and sound editing.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we know technically the difference. Yeah.
Ostensibly, the difference is sound mixing is like the balance levels of like how loud is the music compared to the dialogue compared to the footsteps, and like how is that balanced with each other, whereas editing is more like what is the actual design of the sound, what do the things that make sounds sound like.
Right. I know what they both mean.
Yeah. No,
I don't know how to tell the difference in which one is which very well.
I agree with you, and I wasn't trying to undercut that. I was saying that's the technical explanation of the difference. But in terms of listening to it and distinguishing, well, I think this one really was the best at mixing, but that one was the best at editing. That's hard to.
They're just movies with good sound.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, I guess, that if it's a completely different groups of people in the production process that do those two things, then it makes sense to have the two awards. But it's that those two are harder for the layperson to judge between. But it was nice to see A Quiet Place get something, at least, you know, that seems like an appropriate thing for it to.
And this was, and again, regardless of whichever the one it got, it does, the sound piece of the movie is very good and really helps drive the story along and makes it part of what makes it so good. Yeah.
It's a great movie, except there was one thing about it that really bugged me. It stuck out like a nail in an inappropriate place on a stair. Anyway.
Yes. Yep.
So let's move on, though. We got Best Visual Effects, Avengers: Infinity War, Christopher Robin, First Man, Ready Player One, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. So I think the only real surprise in there is Christopher Robin, just because otherwise this category frequently goes to, you know, the big sci-fi action set piece type of movies, and you got all the usual suspects in there. But, you know, Christopher Robin, I guess it makes sense in the sense that you're incorporating CGI characters into real live action in the same way that the others do, even if it's telling a comparatively more gentle story.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, these all should be. These are some of the ones where I'm surprised I hadn't seen more of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Solo and Avengers. I mean, those are things that I will see.
Yep.
No matter what. So, and then finally, best film editing: Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, and Vice.
Yep. And so.
More the usual characters.
Yep.
Characters here.
Yep. It's pretty common to have the editing category comprised of the same group of movies that are in Best Picture. Is it what's the mix with Best Director? Is
I think it's close.
So Let's see. Black Klansman, Roma. I've got them so far down on this screen it's hard to.
Cold War is not in editing and is in Best Director.
Bohemian Rhapsody is in editing and not director, I think.
Right. Those are the swap.
Mm-hmm.
The others are all in there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. Just because I think that a lot of, somewhat similar to sound mixing and sound editing, I think that for the layperson discerning what is an editor's task and what is a director's task, because obviously depending on the director, they might be either more or less involved with the editing process.
Right. But they have storyboarded it out, and the editor needs to make it look the way that it's envisioned to look. So that is a talent.
Indeed. So editing is no question a huge part of movie making, but not always as easy to separate from directing because we don't know how much the director was directly involved in the editing.
Right.
So, editing is kind of a piece of what we think of as directing. But anyway, those are all of the major categories this year. If you noticed that we did not talk about the best documentary short or animated short, that's just because usually those are harder to see. Sometimes you can find a theater that's going to play them all in one go or something like that, but they're harder to see otherwise. But that certainly doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to see them if you do have the opportunity. Yeah. So I think at a starting point, as we have our introduction here, that puts me at 34.9% of the nominees, and you are at 28.3%. Not that it's a big competition so much as it's just a way of tracking progress. And I think both of us probably recognized that just seeing Roma is 10% all by itself.
Yes.
And
it's also not a competition because otherwise you would have always won.
Well, I certainly frequently end up seeing more, but it's all a balance of things. But the goal is, as we said at the beginning, not so much about keeping score as much as just we should all try to see more movies if we can because they're fun, and it's good to be encouraged to go out and see things at the theater because it's frequently, I think, it's experience we both enjoy, but it's sometimes easier to not go out or just see things on the TV. And that can be good too, but it's nice to have an extra nudge and also to see things that you might not have even checked out before.
Yep.
I managed to see a couple of movies here in South Korea, going to the theater that is now nearby my hotel. And that was kind of neat. So I saw Bohemian Rhapsody with Korean subtitles on the screen.
That's pretty funny.
So what do you think of the what's next on your list? What is the next big priority that you want to make sure you see?
I mean, I kind of want to make an effort to see The Favorite because I know it'll fall off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in it, but I know it's not gonna be it's just not gonna be one I naturally go and see.
Right.
So that
one should be available digitally, like on Amazon Video, on February 12th.
Yeah. So maybe I won't make that my next priority. I want to make sure I see Spider-Man in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
I'll encourage that.
Black Klansman I'll probably watch soon just because it's available on streaming, so that's easy to just watch. Buster Scruggs, same thing, I can just watch. I think I was going to try to make an effort to go see Cold War if I can find a theater that it's in.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, And then trying to figure out, yes, I want to make sure I see some of the documentaries, even though they only get you 1 point. Just so I've seen something, a couple of things.
Yeah, especially that's a more challenging category, and there have definitely been years where we got all the way to the actual award ceremony and didn't see any of them, either of us. You know, I think it's more common that one or the other of us has seen one of them, but they are harder to see, and so like maybe we should think of those and the foreign language ones as being worth more somehow. Like I can double the weight of them or something. The challenge factor. Or we could make those extra credit in the percentage.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
We could add the shorts in that way too.
Yeah,
just change the percentage to be 100% does not include those categories, but seeing them is bonus.
That could be interesting. I'd be interested in looking at that.
Nice. Okay. I'm definitely like you. I think Black Klansman is coming up soon just because it's available to see, and I'm definitely interested in seeing it. I want to see Isle of Dogs because it's a movie that I would have seen already at some point probably anyway, but just hadn't made time for yet. So I'll see that, and then if I can manage to catch Vice, then that would be a good one. Not only because I'm interested, but just because then we can talk about it.
Yep, I really liked it. So.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to checking it out. I am going to be traveling back to the United States in a week, so on the flight, I might have the opportunity to see some movies. Usually, the flights that I've done so far coming back from Korea, the movies available on the flight are kind of that second run theater tier. Like, they're not the current new releases, but they're the ones that were new releases like 3 months ago. And so maybe I'll manage to catch a couple of them there. But we'll see.
Yeah, you might get something like Star is Born or The Favorite.
I don't know. So, yeah, we'll see. But I'm definitely going to be trying to see what I can. And we will be checking in over the next several weeks. I believe the end of February is when the awards ceremony happens.
Yep.
I don't have the actual date in front of me, but it's somewhere in that time frame. So we'll be checking in a couple of times over between now and then to talk about which movies we've seen already, which ones we're planning to see, and to have those previously mentioned, discussions of, brief reviews for the ones that just one of us have seen, and in-depth discussions for the ones that we've both seen.
Yep. 4 weeks exactly from tomorrow for me.
Yep.
It's 4 Sundays from now.
All right. Yeah, so it is the future for me already. It is currently not quite 9 a.m. on Sunday morning for me. So I think that covers it for our introduction here. And next time we'll talk about some of these movies we've seen already. And I hope that if you are watching or listening to this, that you will watch some movies along with us, and we'll continue to do these streaming on Twitch. So if you want to join for the live conversation on some of these, I'll try to give a heads up which movies we're likely to talk about when we do updates. So in the meantime, watch good movies, everybody.
Yep. See you later.